Hey mamas, if you have questions about pelvic floor stuff and how to make your pelvic floor function in a healthy way, this one's for you. We're going to talk about how pelvic tilts can save your pelvic floor. So I'm Devin. If you are unfamiliar with me, I created this group, Mommy Yoga. I have been teaching yoga for about 15 years, and I'm a wife and I'm a mom. I have a 4-year-old and a 14-month-old. And let me tell you, I almost was late. My little guy was feeling very clingy. He had a tough evening and wouldn't let me go. And I just got out like 5 minutes ago. So I'm here and I made it, and that's awesome. Yay. Let's hope he has a great night, because it was a tough evening. And I'm happy that I am having some kid-free time right now. I'm so happy to be chatting with you guys. So let me start off by letting you know why I know about the pelvic floor. So I'm a woman, but women aren't educated enough in this arena. Probably humans in general, but women specifically, it's almost like a taboo topic. People can be a little bit weirded out by it, but it's extremely important. There is a figure out there that 1 in 3 women will experience leakage and incontinence issues, and I want to help make that stat much more of a, like, 1 in 4 eventually, and then 1 in 5 eventually, and then eventually, like, not very many people suffering from this. Because, it's so, like, we don't know enough about it in general, and we just think that that's normal. I was watching a podcast recently where one of the women had a baby last year, and she was like, oh yeah, like trampolines. I'm like, no, my days are done on trampolines. And then her co-host was like, oh yeah, and like sneezes sometimes. And I was like, no. That's not, like, that doesn't come with age or being a mother. Like, that just comes with, like, not enough education on how to help the pelvic floor function. So I want to help you. I want to make sure that if you love trampolines, you can continue going on them without having any worries, and that you don't have to be nervous about when you have to sneeze in public or anything like that. I think that is so sad, and I want to help so that you guys don't feel that way. So let's start off by talking about how I came to know about this stuff. As I said, I'm a yoga teacher. But that's not something that you just are taught in yoga training. I took specific trainings. The first one I took, I didn't realize it was going to be so, like, heavy on pelvic floor stuff. And while I was in it, I was amazed by how much I did not feel what she was talking about. So if you feel like you don't have, like, a very good mind-body connection to your pelvic floor, that's totally normal. I remember coming out of that workshop, and the person I did it with had the same experience as me. She's like, when she said, do you feel this? Like, did you? And I was like, no. So it's very common to not have a really good connection with that area, and that can come with time. But I realized how informative that workshop was, and I took several after that and just learned so much stuff that I would never have ever learned anywhere else except for actively seeking it out. So luckily for me, I took those workshops before I had children, so I knew how to support myself when I became a mother. So I never had issues, and I still don't, thankfully. And I'm going to continue working on this stuff so that I hopefully will never have issues. And yeah, I want to teach you so that you feel the same way. Well, I want to also just quickly say, if anything I'm saying resonates with you, feel free to say so in the comments. If anything is confusing, you can ask in the comments. If you're shy to ask, please feel free to DM me. I want to make sure that you guys understand so that you are not watching this and just being like, oh, well, I don't get it, so I guess this isn't helpful for me. I want to touch on some misconceptions and you know, stay till the end so that you can learn all of the tips and get all of the good juice from this video, this live. So misconception, Kegels. They're the biggest, hugest misconception, and it's the saddest thing because it's basically the only thing anybody, the general population, knows about the pelvic floor. And when I say Kegels, the general population thinks of squeezing and releasing, like you're trying to stop pee and then letting the pee continue. And that is not something we should be practicing. And that, let me know if that's like something that you're like, excuse me, like if that was the first thing that popped into your head, comment and let me know. Yeah, it can actually contribute to that stat I talked about before. So Kegels can be a useful tool, but not this squeeze and release type of Kegel, if you can believe it. Kegels have to be done in a very specific way for them to actually support you and make sure that they help you with your pelvic floor function. So what can happen when you're just doing those squeeze release ones is that you can contribute to tight muscles in the pelvic floor region, and that can lead to leakage and incontinence issues, believe it or not. So that issue comes up not just from weak muscles, but from tight muscles. The pelvic floor, just as like anything else, it has to have balance. It has to have the full range of motion to be functioning in a healthy way. And this is super important. I mean, it's important for any muscle, but it's super important for that muscle because it's like the little hammock of our body that holds all of our stuff in. And we don't want to have issues like that. It's not, you know, we as women are dealing with so many things. We as mothers are dealing with so many things. That's the last thing we need to add to our plate. So make sure that you stick with me so that you know, if you have even that inkling of, oh, whatever, stick with me because I need to tell you this so that you can practice a new way and feel better and not have issues. So let's get into what the heck are pelvic tilts and how do they help. So a pelvic tilt is literally tilting your pelvis forward and backward. It's called anterior and posterior. So if you imagine it like sticking your booty out, or like I like to say, having a scared butt. And you might be able to really visualize that when I say that, but you might be surprised to know that pelvic tilt, like both directions, I have seen over my 15 years of teaching, can be very difficult for the average person. You can visualize it, you can think you know what to do, but then if you're in a forward fold, for example, and your teacher says tilt your pelvis, you're likely, if you're the general population, you likely don't know how to do that, and you're likely bending in your back instead of tilting from your pelvis. So it's incredible how you can visualize how to do it and not actually be able to do it. So instead of just thinking like, oh, like, yeah, I know how to do it, you should practice it in your cat-cow poses. That is the easiest way to access your pelvic tilts in a very exaggerated way so that you can really create that mind-body connection and take it into other poses. But why? So let me tell you what pelvic tilts do for your pelvic floor. When you are tilting your pelvis, if you visualize cat-cow pose, if you're tilting your pelvis in cat pose, you're tilting it in a way such that you're having a scared butt, such that your tailbone is facing down towards the floor. When that happens, naturally, without you doing anything, like consciously, your pelvic floor is engaging in a healthy way. And consequently, your abdomen is engaging. So that's all connected. Then if you think of your cow pose, you're tilting your pelvis in the other direction. You're sticking your butt out. You are imagining your tailbone coming up towards the sky. And doing this helps you to, without doing anything consciously, your pelvic floor is blossoming open. So it's doing cat-cow pose. You find, if you're tilting your pelvis, you find your full range of motion in your pelvic floor. And that is what we want to strive for, to have healthy pelvic floor function. So when we're doing cat-cow pose, if you've taken a yoga class, you've likely done cat-cow. It's how almost every class starts. You are likely thinking of your back. You are likely thinking of the space between your shoulder blades. In your cat pose, you're thinking of really puffing up that space between your shoulder blades. And then in your cow pose, you're thinking of bringing your chest forward and through. And these are common alignment cues that the teacher will give you. But when you are doing your cat-cow pose from the lens of your pelvic floor, you're going to think of the tilt instead of whatever's going on in your back. So in your cat pose, when you're doing the scared cat and you're puffing up your back, you're thinking tailbone down towards the floor as strongly as you can. Like, put your entire brain there and imagine your tailbone. Imagine if you were a cat and try to really get that tail to come down towards the floor. When you do that, first try to connect with your abs and feel if you can feel them engaging. Then eventually try to focus on the pelvic floor. See, when you're doing that, do you feel anything happening? You might not at first, and I'm telling you, I didn't when I first did a workshop where we worked on this. I didn't feel it. It was completely something I had to fake it till I made it sort of thing. And when you do think of it, eventually you create those connections, that mind-body connection, and you will feel it over time. And I promise it's not just a pretend, yeah, I feel it. You will eventually. And then in your cow pose, don't worry about what's going on with your chest or your back. You're thinking of tilting your pelvis so your tail, if you imagine having a tail, is pointing way up towards the sky. And then once again, you're going to feel what's going on. At first, you might just feel the stretch in your core, your abdomen, but eventually you want to put your brain into your pelvic floor and see if you can feel that opening action. And so once again, it could take time, and you will be able to connect it if you continue practicing that. And these are really important things to try to find that mind-body connection, because you take these into other poses, other exercises. Particularly, I know that a lot of moms want to work on their abs and want to work on their core and getting a flat tummy and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's so important to people for some reason. So if that is really important to you, then you are going to try to really think of your cat pose. Think of that scared butt. Think of your tailbone coming down towards the floor. And you're going to carry that into all of your ab exercises. And that's going to really help, first of all, with strengthening your core, but doing it in an efficient way, doing it in a safe way. Because when you are postpartum and you start working on these things, you often will not be engaging your lower abdomen and working on the pelvic floor and the breath, and that can cause some more issues. That can cause doming in your stomach. If you have diastases, that can aggravate it, make it worse, causing things you don't want to have to deal with. So if you are able to put that together, your core exercises are going to transform completely and be so much safer and more effective, and you're going to feel the difference way more than if you're just like going through the motions of doing like sit-ups or something. And, you know, especially don't do sit-ups if you are worried about your pelvic floor at the moment. If you love sit-ups, you can work towards them, but don't do it right now when you are worried about your pelvic floor. And then other things that you want to feel that in could be like back bends, or you could try to connect that feeling in your chair poses, and experiment. Like, once you get the pelvic tilt down, can you find that tilt in any other pose, and how does it affect the pose? How does it make your pelvic floor feel? So these are things you want to explore within your own body. And then doing these things, and, you know, not just focusing on the cat pose, tailbone down, scared butt thing, because you think, oh, well, I want to get a strong pelvic floor. You have to also remember to do the other way so that you have the full range of motion. That is super important. And the blossoming open of the pelvic floor is the thing that nobody talks about. And that's the thing that you need to really pay attention to, because especially if you've been a squeeze Kegel girly, like, you want to be able to find the openness, the flexibility, so that you don't get issues down the road. Yeah, and so pelvic tilts are going to rewire your brain for how you engage your core, you engage your abs, you do back bends and anything like that. And once you have that knowledge, like, really wired in your brain, and you can feel your pelvic floor when you do these things, then you can, if it's important to you, you can try out Kegels in the proper way. So, like I said, sticking to the end, I'm going to tell you about Kegels. So yeah, like I said, if you are currently the squeeze release Kegel girly, you want to stop doing that. You want to get really good with your pelvic floor tilts, your pelvic tilts. And once you are good with that, then you can try out a more effective form of Kegels. So if you've ever heard of like an elevator method, instead of just squeeze release, you're thinking of trying to bring your pelvic floor up and hold it, and then bring it back down and release it. So if you think of like neutral being ground floor, and you want to like try to get your pelvic floor to go up the elevator, you can imagine each floor, and then when you want to go the other way, you're thinking of going down the elevator, going past ground floor, going to like P1, P2, if you think of like a building. And then this is going to help you with that full range of motion once again. So you can work on that with your breath as well. So when you are doing an inhale, you're thinking of going to P1, P2, and when you're doing an exhale, you're thinking of going up the elevator. And the reason for that is that when we're breathing, our diaphragm moves, and that works in conjunction with the pelvic floor. So when you take a deep inhale, your lungs fill up and your diaphragm goes down. So as your diaphragm's going down, you don't want to fight your diaphragm because it's going to be pushing stuff down. You want to think of your pelvic floor having that blossoming open because you're working with that flow of energy. And then on an exhale, your lungs are deflating, so your diaphragm's going back up. So that's when you want to engage your pelvic floor going up the elevator, because you're not fighting against your diaphragm pushing down on stuff. And that goes for your exercises as well. When they say to exhale on something that's like an effort. For example, if you're doing a sit-up, you want to exhale when you're doing the sit-up. And that's because if you're inhaling, your diaphragm's going down, but you're also engaging. So it could cause the doming, the bulging, especially if you have diastases. So you don't want to fight with your breath when you're doing, I said sit up because that is something we are all familiar with. Don't think you should be doing it if you have pelvic floor issues, but if you want to work towards that when you don't have pelvic floor issues, but you want to think of your pelvic floor while you're doing it, then when you're doing the sit up, you're exhaling on the effort, and that means you are also letting the pelvic floor go up. So you're exhaling, pelvic floor, elevators going up. You're not fighting against your diaphragm, and hopefully the bulging and stuff will not happen in that case. So that is what it is. That's how all of that stuff works. Let's review so that that's not confusing for you. When you are working on your pelvic floor, you want to do your pelvic tilts because they can save your pelvic floor. And that is because, we think we should be doing the squeeze release Kegels because we don't have enough education in this arena. But once we do know more, and we know not to do the squeeze release, and we know to do the pelvic tilts because that naturally engages and blossoms open the pelvic floor. And then it's hard to feel at first, but once you create that mind-body connection, then you can take that into other things. When you're doing your cat-cow poses, you are working with your breath. So, when you are doing cow pose, you're doing an inhale. That means your diaphragm's going down, you're blossoming open your pelvic floor. When you're doing your cat pose, you're exhaling, your diaphragm's going up, your tailbone's going down, so you are engaging your pelvic floor, it's going up the elevator. So keeping that knowledge going into other exercises so that you are working with your breath, you're working with your diaphragm, you're working with your pelvic floor instead of fighting all of these elements and not getting anywhere, even though you really want to in a lot of cases. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please feel free to comment or DM me. Let's chat about it, because I want to make sure that you feel good in your body and that this is not a huge issue for you. And if you have anything else you want to chat about with the pelvic floor stuff, then please feel free to let me know. I want you to look out for my polls. I tend to do them on Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays are so that you can choose what this live is about, and Thursdays tend to be so you can choose what my tutorial that I post on YouTube is about. However, we're still in my hip pain relief series. We're going to be going into week 5. I will remind you in the group, but I will let you know when the video is live, and I will post the link in the group. And hopefully that can be really helpful for you, because I know hips are a big thing that causes pain and discomfort in prenatal and postpartum eras. All right, and if you have anything else you want to see regularly in the group, let me know, and I will be happy to include that. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye for now.